Just make love to your car.
Okay, the day has finally come because we're about to use this to paint that. Yep, today is the day we finally paint the Miata. It's been a long time coming, and I'm kind of getting sick of all these mismatched colors. So the first thing we're gonna do is we are gonna sand the car down a little bit. I think I'm gonna start with 320. And also we're going to Bondo up some spots. You can see I already have some Bondo here. And also got to Bondo the mishap when we were doing our fender flares. And once we get all that evened out, we're gonna go ahead and again sand it with 320. So let's get to it. Certain panels will be more visible when you're like looking at it. Like no one's gonna like down here, that shit. No one's gonna fucking, car's way too damn low. Ain't nobody gonna go down that way. You know what I mean? Right. And if they do see the car, they're gonna be far enough that it's gonna look good. But panels like right here, I gotta do my best. Yeah. Because this one you'll be seeing in the sun and shit. You know.
Pretty good so far though. Good progress.
Yeah, it's coming along, Fucking hate it, but prep sucks. I'm doing a 70% job on it. 70%. The C is passing right now.
There you go.
That's what it is. There you go. Yeah. It's clear now, right? Yeah. Perfect.
Oops-a-daisy.
All right, I don't know if I am in the shot or if it's my chest only.
That's a...
Okay, so we're calling it a night for the day. I got a little bit of a late start because yesterday we got a little bit heavy on the 40 ounces, so got a late start. But the car is somewhat sanded. Try to use the DA sander. I have 150 circular pieces of sandpaper, which unfortunately I'm pretty sure I'm not going to use. The problem that I'm having is the panels are not flat, that I can really use the sander very effectively, and I'm ending up having to pretty much hand and block sand it anyway, so that's a bit of a learning curve. But I'm going to try to get a fresh start tomorrow and try to get the rest of the car sanded down with 320 grit. I'm also seeing some things I'm going to have to Bondo again. I hate Bondo, but I think we're going to have to Bondo some things. And yeah, I mean, moving along, a little bit behind schedule, but when are we ever on schedule, right? So the car is all pretty much sanded down. It was really, really helpful to use one of these foam interface pads so that I can use the DA sander on the entire body. We got our Bondo work done, so pretty much all the dents that I wanted, the major dents anyway, I filled up with Bondo. There's a lot of rock chips on the bumper and things like that that honestly, I'm gonna rattle can this car. I don't want to spend the extra hours trying to fix every tiny little dent. I think overall, yeah, it might show when the paint is done, but you know, I don't think it's going to be that bad. So I did fix all the major dents and scratches though with Bondo. So the next step is we're going to build our paint booth. Oh yeah, I actually still got to do the windshield here. Then after that, we're going to go ahead and mask everything off and get it ready to shoot with primer. So still a lot of work ahead of us, but let's go ahead and get down to it. All right, so we are starting to build our ghetto paint booth using some generic plastic sheeting from Home Depot, super cheap to get a ton of. And basically what we did is we ran a bunch of string or wire across the top of our garage here. And then we are using, as you can see, just some masking tape and using that to secure the plastic sheeting. We're gonna go ahead and do that all the way around to create our booth. If you're doing this at home in your garage, you'll probably have a little bit of an easier job doing this because all you really need to do is cover your walls. You're gonna need to figure out some way to obviously cover your roof as well. And then we're going to also obviously close off all the walls. And I'm debating if I should just wet the floor or if I should just lay some plastic sheeting underneath to help prevent any dust.
Look at the mess, look at the aftermath.
But I'll figure that when it comes. So let's go ahead and just continue building our walls for our booth. All All right, so we got most of the paint booth put together. We got the car in here. Just knowing ahead of time, it's gonna be pretty tight to paint, but I think it will be doable. It's not airtight, but I think it'll be enough, which is just to make sure, you know, no larger specks of dust fall into, onto the car, and also to try to help keep the fumes out of the rest of the garage. I can't paint tonight, obviously, because it's nighttime, but when I do paint, I am gonna extend this wall right here. That's just gonna go ahead and complete the seal, and obviously leave a little bit of a walkway here so that the rest of the boys can get through the garage. Overall, you know, it was a lot of work to get the booth up, unfortunately, but here it is. So again, next, all we got to do left onto the car is I'm gonna run it a couple passes over with some alcohol to clean it up real good, and then get the primer on there. Well, it is paint day. Well, loose primer day. The booth is built. I got my filters in and my fans in, and of course, it's raining today, but booth is built. A little bit concerned because, as you can see right now, we look okay. We got some positive air pressure because earlier I had 2 exhaust fans and I thought that hole would be enough where the filter is right there to bring an intake full of air, but what happened is the entire booth collapsed. So a little bit concerning. I'm gonna try to see if I can maybe get those walls to just stay back away from the paint job, but we're gonna move on. We're gonna spray the car with primer. Generally, you don't really need to use primer if you have a really good like paint job already underneath and you just need to scuff it up a bit, but as you can see, I had to do a lot of Bondo work, body work, there's bare metal showing and whatnot, so we're gonna hit it with the primer. This will also let us kind of get a good glimpse of how the cans are spraying onto the car. Oh man, you can see it's windy too, it's terrible. Spray onto the car and give us a good idea of how the paint will lay down. Also, real quickly, I wanted to try something to hopefully make the primer spray a little bit easier, and that is to warm up the can, and that'll make the primer spray a little bit smoother. Been seeing a lot of good things about doing something like this before you spray, so let's give it a shot. Okay, primer is on. Honestly, it was not a good experience. Problems I was running into. Well, first off, I went through a lot more cans than I initially thought, and actually one of them broke. So I actually had to run out, luckily, and grab a couple more cans just to finish the job. And even then, I think I went through, for the Miata, I went through about 6, 7 cans of primer just to get one coat on. Problems I'm running into is obviously the stock tip that comes with the spray cans. It's just the spray pattern is like maybe an inch wide, and it's really hard to get a nice even coat with that kind of tip. Luckily, I did sort of expect this in the beginning, and what I have been using is this tip right here. This is a graffiti wide spray can tip. They call them, I believe they call them like Rusto fat caps, and I'll leave a link where you can grab some of these. It's basically a female tip that goes into these Rustoleum cans, and it gives you a much wider spray fan. And once I switched over to that cap, it just went a lot smoother. But overall, it's way too many cans, not even enough, takes way too much time. But here we are with our first, probably our only coat of primer on. Okay. Woo! All right. 2 coats roughly laid down. The actual color coat laid down a lot easier and better than the primer coat did. I'm pretty happy with it. pretty happy with it. So it's drying right now. It's still really, really wet. The next portion is once it's dry, we're gonna wet sand it and then hopefully buff it to kind of see what kind of gloss we got, but not bad so far. I mean, there's orange peel. That's to be expected with spray paint. But again, I'm really stoked. The primer really did not make me feel so good, but the color coat laid down a lot better. So let's let it dry and then we'll move on to the next step. Now, while this paint is drying, I'm gonna also paint the over fenders. So let's go ahead and get that done. So the Miata is all painted and everything, including the over fenders that we got over there, but the job is not finished yet. We still have to do a little bit of wet sanding and buffing to really get the best finish that we can on the Miata. So we obviously have some orange peel on the paint job, and we're gonna hit it with some 3000 grit only because I am a little bit concerned as how thick the paint job is, so I don't wanna start with anything a little bit too aggressive that I accidentally burn through the paint. So we're gonna see what 3000 will do for us, and we'll go from there. So we got a lot of work ahead of us, so let's get down to it. So quick update, we just finished sanding the car down, wet sanding it with 3000 grit, and unfortunately the 3000 grit really isn't cutting that much. There's still orange peel, and when I stepped it down to 1500 grit, it definitely got the orange peel out. However, the moment I put a buffer to it, it just ate through the paint. So there was actually a couple of test spots on the car that actually we burnt through the paint. So kind of my fear is being realized is that I didn't put enough layers of paint on there to correctly be able to, correct the paint. I think what we're gonna have to kind of settle with is just as best as the 3000 grit will get us and as best as a buff and polish will get us. So there's probably still gonna be orange peel. It's not gonna be like a glass finish, but then again, we did spray paint this with spray paint cans, so not really quite sure the type of results that I was really expecting, but I mean, on the bright side, it's pretty glossy. So let's just go ahead and get that done, and let's see what our final results are gonna be like.
Let's go.
Now again, this paint job is not show car perfect. Definitely has its faults. Partly because I couldn't be bothered to fix them, and partly because we shot it out of a can. Now, but the real question is, what should you do? Now, obviously shooting out of a gun and a compressor is gonna give you a lot better results. Materials can be cheaper than doing it out of a spray can, and you'll get much more durable, much more thicker layers of paint than if you did it out of a spray can. But in a pinch, you can successfully and decently spray a car with spray cans. Now, if you want a passable job like on the Miata, it really is quite simple. You're just gonna need about triple or quadruple the amount of cans so that you can get a nice thick layer of paint so that you can wet sand all the orange peel out. Although maybe a flat or satin color might be a little bit more forgiving. Okay, so a quick breakdown of the materials being used for this project. Starting with the primer, and used Rusto's 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. This primer, as you saw in the video, doesn't really spray on very good, and you don't really get a lot per can. So I actually had to go through 8 cans of primer, and honestly, I probably would feel more comfortable doing it with 10 cans. Because again, if you saw the one layer that we were able to get out of these 8 cans, it really wasn't a good first layer. Moving on to the color, I used Sunrise Red, the advanced formula stuff, and I bought 12 cans total. I think we went through about 9 or so cans, so there was a little bit left over, and we got about 2 coats of paint onto the car with these 9 cans. Again, the color went on a lot smoother than the primer, and each can runs about, well, actually a 6-pack runs about 35, so I'd say we spent about, what, 70 bucks on color, and the primer actually ended up probably costing us around like, I want to say like 35 to 40 bucks. So all in all, what is that, like $110 or so for this paint job? Not too bad. And that is going to do it for today's episode of Hazard Garage. The Miata turned out really good. I am super stoked. You can't even tell sometimes that it was out of a spray can. But it had me worried in the beginning, but again, I think it turned out great. As always, thank you for watching. We got some really cool things to finish out this build, so make sure you subscribe to see the rest of it. Thank you again for watching. Peace.